ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. In last week's lesson, we were looking at verse number 8, 9 and 10 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And we were looking at the hypocrisy, the evil traits, the bad actions, the fitna of the munafiqs and the hypocrites. And we were also looked at the definition of who is a munafiq, who is a hypocrite, and also mentioned or also quoted Imam Abu Bakr al-Jassas's definition of a hypocrite, that there are two types of hypocrites, there are two types of hypocrisy. And he says that the first type of hypocrisy is got to do with the beliefs, nifaqul aqidah, where he says that a person who outwardly will say that he is a believer, outwardly he will say that he's a Muslim, he will even come to the masjid, read namaz, he may even have a beard, he may even wear the Islamic clothing, he may even wear a jubbah, a hat and so on and so forth. And during Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time, these people would even sacrifice their lives and would go out with the fellow Muslims or with other Muslims to various battles, to various wars and expeditions. However, inside them or inwardly, they had disbelief and they had kufr. So that is the first category of nifaq and hypocrisy. And what is mentioned in verse number 8 talks about those types of hypocrites who outwardly claim to be believers, however inwardly they had disbelief and they had kufr in their hearts. And it is unanimously agreed by all the scholars, by everyone, that such a person is considered as a kafir and such a person is considered as a disbeliever. And then the second type of hypocrites or hypocrisy are those people whose action and whose conduct is contrary to what they are preaching. That they may be preaching, they may be saying that you should come to the namaz or you should come to the mosque and read namaz and so on. They may be saying that you should refrain from selling alcohol. They may be saying that you should refrain from doing zina and adultery, but they are doing it themselves. So that is also another form of hypocrisy, and that hypocrisy is called nifaqul amal or nifaqul amal, where the nifaq and the hypocrisy has got to do with the conduct and action. And with regards to the second type of hypocrisy or hypocrite or nifaq, all the scholars have said that such a person does not become a disbeliever. If his conduct and habit goes against what he is preaching, he doesn't become a disbeliever. However, that person is considered as a sinner, and it is necessary for him to repent for his shortcomings and do tawbah and seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy from what he has done. Then we just mentioned some of the things with regards to hypocrites and these munafiqs. And then we finished off verse number 10 by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying or mentioning or pointing out that what led to these hypocrites and these munafiqs choose this way of life. Because obviously a person could have been a Muslim. He could have just said, I believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I believe in Allah, and then inwardly have disbelief as well, so he could be considered as a Muslim. Or he could openly deny and then become a kafir or disbeliever. But what is it which led to these hypocrites and these munafiqs choose this way of life or this method of life, where outwardly they are claiming to be believers, outwardly they are coming to the masjid, outwardly they are participating, they are helping Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, inwardly they have belief of kufr, they have disbelief in their heart. What led them to this particular way of life? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from verse number 10 explains it. And he says that the reason why is fi qulubihim marad, that these people in their hearts, they had marad inside, they had a disease, they had an illness in their heart. And another interpretation or another tafsir of the word marad, the marad was interpreted as jealousy, that these people had jealousy in their heart. And as I mentioned last week, that when we analyze this second interpretation, jealousy leads to hypocrisy. Like jealousy and hypocrisy comes together or comes hand in hand. And I gave an example of a colleague. There may be a person who you work with or a colleague, and he may be more better than you. He may be more knowledgeable than you. So what happens is that you get jealous of that person. So when you are in front of him, you will be all nice to him. You will talk to him nicely, how's everything and so on. But then in his absence, you will slander about him. You will backbite about him. You will talk ill and bad of him. So jealousy, when there's jealousy, hypocrisy comes. And this is what happened to these munafiqs. Because you may be thinking, how did they become jealous? The way they became jealous is that they saw their forefathers' religion slowly being eradicated. The religion which their forefathers had acted upon for many hundreds and thousands of years, they saw this new religion, i.e. Islam, was slowly eradicating their forefathers' religion. They saw that the customs and the practices which they would do, i.e. for example drinking alcohol, things which were like considered norm during Zaman Jahiliyyah, during the days of ignorance, like drinking alcohol, committing adultery, burying their daughters alive, these kind of things, usurping or eating the wealth of the yatim and the orphans and so on, these things were considered as normal. But when the hypocrites saw that Islam was taking over their religion, that Islam was slowly eradicating their forefathers' religion, they saw that Islam slowly was dismantling their customs and their beliefs, this hypocrisy and this jealousy slowly grew, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He increased this jealousy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He increased their hypocrisy, and because of this reason, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, that for them lies a grievous punishment. That they thought to themselves that, look, our forefathers' religion is being dismantled and is being destroyed, so the only way we can stop this is by pretending to be Muslims, working inside, working within, that we pretend to be Muslims, and whenever Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes up a plan, say to attack a particular country or a particular fort of the disbelievers, then we would spread this secret to the disbelievers, and then this is how slowly Islam may be dismantled. So this is what they thought, and because of their plans, because of their devices, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, that for them lies a grievous punishment. Why? بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ, because they had been lying. بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ means that because they had been lying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish them. And how have they been lying? What is the kizb? What is the lie? Obviously, they outwardly claim to be Muslims. They told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we are Muslims. They told the fellow Muslims that we are Muslims as well. However, inside them, in their hearts, they had disbelief and they had kufr. So because of this white lie, because of this blatant lie, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that these people would be punished severely in the hereafter. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Now, as mentioned last week from verse number 10, that from this particular topic or from this particular verse, the masla or the rule or the fiqhi issue which can be deduced from this particular verse is with regards to illness and diseases and the cure and the treatment for various diseases and for various illnesses. Now, last week I gave the definition of what is marad, and just for the brothers who weren't here last week, marad basically means, the literal meaning of marad or illness or diseases is basically that state a person experiences which makes him incapable of doing a certain action or a certain act as he would have done earlier or as he would have done before. So just say, for example, like when you were around 15, 20, then you could run around and so on. But when you hit your 40s and 50s, then you can't run around as much as you could have done when you were 15 and 20. So that is a marad. Literally, that is known as marad because obviously old age is also considered as a disease, is also considered as a marad and an illness as well. Now, as promised, the topic for discussion the next 15 minutes or so is with regards to the treatment of these diseases and illnesses and what does Islam say with regards to that. Now, before we look at the main masail, the first thing is that treating yourself or curing yourself from various illnesses or diseases, in Islam it's only considered as mustahab and desirable. And it's mentioned in many books of fiqh, in particular the Hanafi books. It says quite clearly that if a person, if he is sure or if he is certain that this particular remedy or this particular treatment will make me better or will cure me from my illness, then it's only mustahab. La ba'sa, it's got the word which basically means that it's only mustahab, it's only preferable to treat yourself. Even to the extent that if a person was ill and he had the medicines in front of him, he had the various treatments available over the counter at a chemist or at a hospital, but he didn't go there, he didn't go to the chemist, and he passes away, he dies because of those illnesses, then he would not be considered sinful. He would not be considered as he inadvertently or indirectly he took his own life. So that is the first mas'ala, the first ruling is that it's not necessary to treat yourself. It's only considered as mustahab and desirable to treat yourself. Like for example, if a person has a cough or a fever and so on, so these things after a couple of days, it goes away, naturally it just goes away. So during those 2 days, it's only mustahab, desirable to go to make a doctor's appointment, to get some medicine, or to go to a chemist and then get some medicine. It's only considered as desirable and mustahab, and if a person refrains from taking any medicine or going for some treatment or any cure, then he would not be considered sinful, he would not be considered liable if something worse happens, or if in the worst case scenario, if he was to pass away, he would not be considered as he indirectly took his life. So that is the first mas'ala, that it's only considered mustahab and desirable to treat yourself and to cure yourself. Now, after we've just determined that it's only mustahab and desirable to cure yourself and treat yourself, then wherever possible, that person, that Muslim, should endeavor to use halal and pure medicine or halal and pure substances or halal and pure treatment and cure to help him assist him in making that person better. Okay, if for example, if an illness is such that he's got a choice of, for example, haram or halal medicine, then wherever possible, he should always go for the halal option, and he should always go for the halal medicine, and he should use that to cure himself. And that is like the general ruling, and wherever possible, he should refrain from using anything haram and anything unlawful. And this is actually mentioned in a hadith of Sunan Abu Dawud, narrated by Sayyidina Abu Darda radhiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that inna Allah anzala da'a wa dawa'a. That verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has revealed the illness, He has also sent down the illness, wa dawa'a, and the cure for that illness. And He goes on to say, وَجَعَلَ لِكُلِّ دَاءٍ دَوَاءً. And for every illness, there is a cure. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world, He has sent the illness, He has sent the disease, but also at the same time, He has also given us the cure and the treatment for that illness and for that disease. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes on to say, فَتَدَاوَوْا, that cure yourself, وَلَا تَدَاوَوْا بِحَرَامٍ, but do not cure yourselves with something which is haram and something which is unlawful. And in another hadith, which can be found in Musnad Ahmad, Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan Tirmidhi, and Sunan Ibn Majah, narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah anhu, where he says, Naha Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam anid dawa'il khabith, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has prohibited us from filthy and impure medicine. So the base ruling is that wherever possible, use the halal alternative. Use the halal medicine. If there is like a cough medicine, whatever, look for the halal one. Okay, if there's some kind of tablet, then look for the halal tablet, the halal medicine, and wherever possible, refrain from using anything which is haram, and refrain from using any treatments or any medicine which may have some haram or unlawful substances inside. So that is the base ruling. However, there are some occasions where a person, he may be ill, but the only remedy, the only treatment available is something which is haram and unlawful. Early on in the year when there was the swine flu outbreak, so the only thing which was available was Tamiflu. And Tamiflu is made out of capsules, and as all of you know, capsules made out of gelatin. And there are other medicines as well, like a cough medicine and so on, where you got really bad cough and you got a lecture tomorrow, you're a lecturer at university and you need to give a talk and so on. But the only available medicine or the only effective medicine is this cough medicine, but which has alcohol inside. So the question is that in those situations where there is an illness, there is a disease you are inflicted with, but the only remedy or the only treatment is something which has haram and something which has unlawful substance inside. What should he do in those situations, and what should he do in those predicaments and in those scenarios? Now, Mufti Shafi rahmatullah alayh, who has written Ma'rif al-Quran, and similarly his son Mufti Taqi Uthmani, were very two famous contemporary scholars, have written in their various books, Mufti Shafi in his Ma'rif al-Quran and Mufti Taqi Uthmani in his Takmila Fathul Mulhim, which is a commentary of Sahih al-Muslim. But this particular book, Takmila Fathul Mulhim, he actually complements the initial commentary, which is Fathul Mulhim, written by Maulana Shabbir Ahmad Usmani, which is again a commentary of Sahih al-Muslim. So in this Takmila Fathul Mulhim and similarly in Ma'rif al-Quran, they have written, or it has been mentioned, that there are two angles to look at this particular issue. That a person who's got an illness and the only medicine available or the only treatment available is something which is unlawful and haram. So there are two ways to look at it. The first way to look at it is that if the illness or if the disease is something which is life-threatening, that if it's a life and death matter, like it's such an illness, such a disease where it's a life and death matter, that if he doesn't cure himself or if he doesn't treat himself, then he may die. So with regard to the first angle or the first situation, if it's a life and death matter and the only treatment available is something which is unlawful and haram, then it is permissible to use it. Okay, it is permissible to use it, and it would not be considered disliked or detestable in using something which is haram and unlawful. And the reason why is because this principle is actually mentioned in the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that at the time of necessity, things which are haram and unlawful, things which are prohibited, they become halal, they become permissible. And this is mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ وَمَا أُهِلَّ بِهِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ. That He, i.e. the Almighty, has prohibited us from Maita. Maita means carrion, like dead meat. You see a dead animal and so on, or anything which is dead. So to consume from that, to eat that, is something which is haram. So إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ وَالدَّمَ. Blood, eating blood, consuming blood is something which is haram. وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ. And the flesh of a swine, the flesh of a pig is something which is haram. Similarly, وَمَا أُهِلَّ بِهِ لِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ. Those animals which have been slaughtered without the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being recited, meaning that the slaughterer, whilst he slaughtered the animal, even though the animal may be something halal, like a cow or a sheep or a camel and so on, but the slaughterer, when he slaughtered that particular animal, he didn't mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name, or he just like cut it without saying the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without saying any words which indicate towards the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all these things are haram. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say that فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ. However, if a person is compelled out of necessity to eat it, meaning that he's traveling somewhere, he's in a jungle and there's no food at all and so on, but the only food available to him is this swine, or the only food available to him is some blood he has or some dead meat which he has found, then in that situation, غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ, as long as he does not seek pleasure, وَلَا عَادٍ, and he doesn't exceed the limit, فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ, then there is no sin in him, and it will be permissible for him to eat that swine, it will be permissible for him to consume that blood, it will be permissible for him to eat dead meat and so on. All these things will be permissible as long as he is compelled out of necessity to do that. So similarly in this situation as well, a person who's really ill and there is a kind of medicine or treatment was found, but this treatment has something which is haram and lawful, then it will be permissible for him to use that. And this principle is something which we should all, which I probably need to highlight as well, is that we always think Islam to be something which is rigid, something which is harsh, that it doesn't look at the benefit of the people, it doesn't look at the difficulties people are facing and so on, and it just basically gives a rigid, straightforward fatwa or a straightforward ruling. But there are many examples when we look at Islamic jurisprudence where it clearly says that at the time of necessity, where there's difficulty on people, then the rulings alter, the rulings change. And a good example of that will be of fasting. That fasting, as all of you know, is compulsory. However, if a person is really ill, or if a person is ill, just normally ill, but he fears that if he was to fast, his illness will aggravate, his illness may increase, then it is permissible for him not to fast. He could fast on another day. When he gets better, when he regains his energy, he could fast on another day. Take another example of tayammum. Like a person, he may have water at home, but the water is like so cold. And just for example, he's ill as well, and he's had a wet dream. So the water is so cold that if he was to use that water, there is a danger that he may become ill. So what does Islam say? Islam doesn't say, no, you still have to use the water, you still have to go for a cold shower and so on. No, Islam says that you could do tayammum instead. So that's one thing you need to understand about Islamic jurisprudence and in particular fiqh, that it is not rigid, it is not harsh and so on. We always, when a fatwa, when a ruling is given, it's always looked at for the benefit and for the easiness of the people. Obviously, there are some occasions where the ruling has to be strict so that people don't take advantage. But just generally speaking, where people are not taking the advantages and the route and it's done for, and there is a severe or there is extreme need and necessity, then the rulings do alter. So as I was saying, that exactly good example of will be this one here as well. So again, we could look at it in a harsh way and say that no, this medicine, this cough medicine has something haram inside, you won't be able to use it. Or Tamiflu, it's got something haram inside, you may not be able to use it. But because out of necessity, it becomes permissible and it becomes lawful. So that is the first angle to look at it. And the second way or the second angle to look at this particular issue or ruling is that if a person is inflicted with such a disease or such an illness, which is not a life and death matter, is ill, like for example, he's got a severe cough or he's got severe flu, but it's not a life and death matter. Now the question is that whether he will be allowed to use a medicine or to use some such treatment which may have something unlawful or haram inside. Now, with regards to the second angle, the scholars have said that it is preferable that he refrains from that particular medicine or from that particular treatment. However, if another lawful or permissible medicine is not found, or another lawful and pure and permissible medicine is not as effective, then it will be permissible for him to use that particular medicine. So there is a leeway, there is a rukhsah. Like there may be an illness where it's not a life and death matter, so like a cough medicine and so on, it's not life and death matter. However, the medicine which he was prescribed or the medicine which he got from the counter is such that it's got alcohol inside. Now, if this medicine is the only one available, or it's the only one which is effective, the only one which basically, makes him better. The other ones would have made him better, but he would have made him better after a week. But he needs to get better in a few days. So if this medicine is effective, and on top of that is available, the only one available, then even though it may be haram, even though it may have something unlawful and haram inside, it will be permissible for him to use that particular medicine. So that is the ruling. So the conclusion we can deduce is that if it's a life and death matter, then obviously it will be permissible to use a haram substance, to use something haram to cure himself. However, if it's not a life and death matter, then he should refrain from it. However, it will be permissible for him to use that medicine, that treatment, as long as if that is the only one available, or if that medicine happens to be the most effective out of the other ones which are available in the market. Now the next masla, which I'll just quickly mention before we look at the tafsir of verse number 11, comes under the category of illness and treatment of illness, is with regards to life support machines and ventilators. Now, the masla which I'm mentioning is not like a general masla, it's not like a general ruling. And if you have any relatives or any loved ones who may have in the future may face this particular situation, then don't rely on what I say, because obviously every individual cases are different. So what I'm going to mention is just like a general kind of ruling, what the scholars have said, but every individual situation and their difficulties are looked at or assessed individually. So obviously you need to contact a particular scholar or mufti if that ever happens to you. Now, just generally speaking, life support machines and similarly ventilators, they are just considered as another form of treatment. The same way buying a cough medicine from over the counter or a tablet, paracetamol and so on, they are considered as medication. Then similarly, life support machines and ventilators, they are also considered as medicine. And as I've just already illustrated, that medicine or treating yourself isn't something necessary. It's only considered as mustahab and desirable. And obviously in Fatah India, there's actually a separate section, and he mentions that if a person, as I just told you at the beginning, that if a person, if he refrains from treating himself, refrains from curing himself, and he happens to die, then that person would not be considered sinful, would not be considered liable for indirectly causing his death. Now, with regards to life support machines and ventilators, if the doctor, and this doctor happens to be a God-fearing Muslim doctor, if he gives mashwara, or if he tells you that, look, there is no point in continuing the treatment, that there's no point in continuing treatment, that even if you have the ventilator on, even if you have the life support machine on, he's not going to get better. Okay, and sometimes it happens that person, he's had a heart attack, or he's had something, a severe disease and so on, a severe illness, and there's no way of him getting better again. And the doctors, what happens is that they tell you that there's no benefit in keeping on the life support machine, there's no benefit in keeping on the ventilator. Now, if the doctor has said that, and you can see, and you've taken mashwara from other kind of doctors, other Muslim doctors and so on, and you can see that there's no benefit in keeping on the life support machine, there's no benefit in keeping on the ventilator, it's not going to make him better, it's not going to cure him, then to switch off the life support machine, to switch off the ventilator is permissible. Okay, just like as I said, another form of medication. And when that medication is showing you that it's not going to make him better, then obviously, as you would normally do with normal medicine, normal tablets and so on, you will refrain from that particular medication. So similarly, exactly same thing with regards to life support machine and ventilators, when it's clearly shown that it's not making a difference, it's not making that person better, then to switch that life support machine off, to switch the ventilator off will be permissible, and the family members or whoever, or the son, whoever decides to go ahead with that decision, then he will not be considered liable for causing the death of his father or causing the death of his relatives. Because as I just told you, that life support machines and ventilators, they also come in the ambit of medication, and medication or treating yourself, curing yourself, is only considered as mustahab and desirable. So these are just two rulings which I mentioned. Inshallah, there's other rulings with regards to medicine and so on, which inshallah we'll look at when there's other verses with regards to illness and curing, which inshallah is going to come later on in Surah Al-Baqarah. Now the remaining 10 minutes or so, just going to make a start on the next verse of the Tafseer. And the next verse which we're going to start is verse number 11 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And for the brothers who haven't been here for the past couple of weeks or so, we've just been looking at the first 20 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. And the first 5 verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the God-fearing people, He talks about the believers. And then the next 2 verses, from verse number 6 and 7, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the disbelievers. And then from verse number 7 all the way till verse number 20, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the hypocrites, and is talking about the munafiqs. So, and inshallah, and alhamdulillah, last week we looked at the verse number 8, 9 and 10. We looked at last week. So inshallah we'll make a start on verse number 11 today. Now verse number 11, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. That when it was said to them, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ, or when it was said to them, or when it was said to them, لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, that do not spread disorder. لَا تُفْسِدُوا means do not spread disorder, do not spread mischief or fitna, fil ard, on earth. Qalu, the munafiqs, the hypocrites would reply by saying, Innama nahnu muslihun, we are nothing but reformers. Now, let's look at this particular verse in more detail. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ. From here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is again indicating towards another stupidity, another foolish act of these hypocrites. That when the Muslims, when they found out that these people are in fact hypocrites, these people are in fact munafiqs, then the Muslims, they told them, La tufsidu fil ard, that do not cause mischief. They gave them advice, they gave them nasiha, and they told them that mend your ways, do not choose this way of life. But instead, these munafiqs, these hypocrites replied by saying, Innama nahnu muslihun, that we are not someone who are committing mischief or fitna or anything like that, but instead they reply by saying that we are reforming people. Innama nahnu muslihun, that we are reformers. We are in fact reforming these people, and we are not causing any mischief and causing any fitna. Now, from the word وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ, when it was said to them, an objection arises. And the objection is, or the i'tiraz is, that how can it be said to them, do not cause mischief on earth, when munafiq or nifaq or hypocrisy is something which has got to do with your heart. As I mentioned quite detailed last week, that nifaq and hypocrisy is got to do with your heart. No one can see your heart, no one can see what you are doing. It's like, for example, a person, he may be reading namaz, and obviously objectively or outwardly we may say, oh, this person is a very good person, he's reading namaz and so on, he looks religious. But whether that namaz is being accepted or not, that is not between us and him, that is between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that whether in his heart he is reading that namaz exclusively and solely for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or whether he is doing it to show off, whether he is doing it to show other people. Now the question arises here is that these munafiqs, these hypocrites, no one knew what is in their heart. They, as I said, they looked like Muslims. They even wore Islamic clothing. Many of them had beards. Many of them would wear the hat, would wear the jubbah and so on. Many of them would participate in various battles and expeditions. Many of them would come for namaz and so on. So how could the Sahabas, how could Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could tell from outside that these people had nifaq, these people had hypocrisy in their hearts? Now the answer to that, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ, the interpretation we have to give is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through a miracle, knew that these people were hypocrites. That through wahi and through divine revelation, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam found out or knew that these people were hypocrites and these people were munafiq. Or the second interpretation we have to give is that the Sahabas, the companions, may have saw something of these hypocrites, may have saw something of these munafiqs, where even though they may have been reading namaz and so on, but inwardly, or whilst they were at home or whilst with their family, they may have done something which indicated that they had disbelief and they had kufr in their heart. Now with regards to the first interpretation, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through wahi or through divine revelation knew that these people were hypocrites, and this is actually in fact supported by a hadith. And there is a hadith in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm not sure who the actual narrator of the hadith is, but he actually mentioned under the section of the miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, many miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inshallah, which we will look at when during the course of the tafsir. But one of the miracles was that once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was on a Jummah, during the Jummah khutbah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, a wahi was sent to him, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned all the munafiqs who were living in Medina at that time. This is a hadith which you can find in Mishkat al-Masabi, and all the name, every single munafiq, their name, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned. That this is a munafiq, and so on. And in the book of Mishkat al-Masabi, it actually covers one page, one thick page, one long page of all the munafiq which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned during that Jummah. So from this we can understand that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through divine revelation, through wahi, as a miracle, he was told that this person is a munafiq, this person was a hypocrite, and so on and so forth. And the Sahabas also heard this, so therefore they said to these munafiqs, to these hypocrites, that la tufsidu fil ard, that do not spread mischief and do not spread disorder on earth. Another point, or another masla which we can also deduce from here, is that munafiqs or hypocrites is only during Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time. Nowadays, you may have munafiq, you may get munafiq, but we cannot say for sure that he is a munafiq or he is a hypocrite. During Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had the wahi, divine revelation was always revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was told that this person is a munafiq, or this person is a hypocrite, this person is a hypocrite, this person is a munafiq. Now, in our time, because there isn't wahi anymore, we don't get divine revelation and so on. So therefore, categorically, we can't say he is a hypocrite, he is a munafiq. Even though his conduct or his actions or practice may go against what a Muslim should do. But even then, you cannot call that person for sure 100% that this person is a munafiq and this person is a hypocrite. This is only during Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time where you can clearly differentiate that this is a Muslim, this is a kafir, and this is a munafiq. But during our time, we could only say, okay, this person is a Muslim and this person is a kafir. But in between, this person is a munafiq, like outwardly he's claiming to be a Muslim and inwardly he's got disbelief. We can't claim that. Why? Because we don't know what's in his heart. So وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ, when these munafiqs and when these hypocrites were told, لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, that do not cause mischief and do not cause disorder on earth. Now, what is meant by causing mischief and what is meant by causing disorder? Now, Mufassirin, i.e. the commentators of the Holy Quran, they have said that the belief which they hid in their heart, that is the fasad, that is the mischief. That they claim to be Muslims, but when they were with their disbelieving friends, when they were with the kafirs, they would be with them, they would act like them, and all the secrets which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam may have told them, they would spread it to these disbelievers. So here, la tufsidu means those beliefs or the kufr, the disbelief which they had in their heart, which they were hiding from other Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that la tufsidu fil ard, that do not spread this mischief, or when the Sahabas told them that do not spread this mischief on earth, that do not spread this mischief by telling the disbelievers that like we are one of you, and then with the Muslims, when you are with the Muslims that or we are one of you and so on, and this fitna and this fasad, do not cause this on earth. Now these hypocrites, they reply by saying, innama nahnu muslihun, that we are not causing mischief, we are not causing disorder on earth, but instead we are reforming these people. These hypocrites, they were saying, when they were causing these mischief, when, like for example, there was a particular expedition or a battle, so these people would go and tell the kafirs, the disbelievers, of that particular secret that the Muslims are planning to attack you. So when they were told that, look, don't do this, don't cause this fitna, don't cause this kind of bloodshed and disorder on earth, they would reply by saying, we are not causing any mischief, we are not causing any disorder, but instead, innama nahnu muslihun, we are in fact reforming these people. We are reforming the Muslims, we are reforming the disbelievers. Now from this particular verse, one particular point is deduced from here, one particular masla. And that is that actions of people, like objectively, actions of people are taken into consideration than what is inside their heart. Now I just told you, or I just gave the example that there may be a person who's reading so much namaz and so on. So we will look at that person and say, yes, he's a very religious person and so on. There may be a person who's doing a lot of work for deen, doing a lot of khidmah for deen. So again, we may say to that person, yes, he's a very religious person, he's a very good person, he's doing a lot of sacrifice and a lot of khidmah for deen. But what is in his heart, whether he's doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not, that is between himself and Allah. We just look at it objectively and say, okay, he's doing good things and so on. So these hypocrites, these munafiqs, they were causing these fitna and fasad and so on, but they were saying that, no, we're not causing any fasad, we're not causing any mischief, we're not causing any disorder, but instead we are just trying to reform these people. But because what they were doing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala termed it as disorder, so therefore their action will be considered as fitna. Their action will be considered as mischief, it will be considered as they were creating disorder on earth, and their action will not be considered as reforming other people. Why? Because the actions which they are doing, people will look at the actions and not what they intended to do in their heart. It's like it comes in another hadith where the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that refrain from places where people, or refrain from places and activities where people may use to slander you. Now what does this particular hadith mean? Is like, for example, you may have gone to a pub and you may have just gone there to have a glass of orange juice. Now, when you came out of the pub, okay, people saw you. Now, obviously, people are not going to think to yourself, people are not going to think that, oh, you just went to the pub to have a glass of orange juice, but instead they will think that this person, he just came out of the pub after drinking a couple of pints of beer and so on. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that refrain from places or activities which people may use to slander you. So exactly same thing with the munafiqs as well. That even though they may be thinking, or like we're doing something good here, that we actually telling people the secrets of Muslims and so on, we actually trying to do something so that a war doesn't break out and so on. So even though they may be thinking that we are reforming people, but because the actions which they did, that was considered something as disorder, something fitna and so on. So therefore the Quran termed their actions as fitna, termed their actions as disorder. The exactly same way a person who just walks out of the pub and so on. So obviously you will say that this person has just gone to a pub and he drank alcohol. Even though that person may be thinking to himself, no, I didn't drink alcohol, I just had a couple of glasses of orange juice. But people are not going to think like that. So exactly same thing here with the munafiq as well. And this is a very important point which we can deduce. And that is that always do things where, like even though like you may have the best of intentions, but if you think that people may take the wrong meaning here, then you should refrain from that particular action. You may be like, for example, talking to a girl. So even though you may have the best intention that I'm talking to this girl so that she may become a Muslim or she may become closer towards Islam and so on. But then outwardly people will think, oh, this person got a girlfriend and so on. So, things, activities which people may use to slander you, you should refrain from that. And this point can be actually highlighted from this particular verse. Just very quickly, verse number 12, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. That these munafiqs, these hypocrites, they were saying that we are nothing but we are reforming the characters of these disbelievers and of the Muslims. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies by saying, no, Allah, beware, إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ. That in fact these hypocrites and these munafiqs, they are the one who are causing disorder, they are the one who are causing mischief and fitna, وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, and they are not aware of. Inshallah, the commentary of this particular verse we will look at next week. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to act upon what's been said. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Does have any questions then?